Good evening, everybody. Please be seated. Welcome to the meeting of Full Council this evening. I am the Mayor of Rugby, Councillor Carolyn Watson-Merritt, and will be chairing the meeting. This meeting is being web streamed to the public through the Council's YouTube channel. During the meeting, if you wish to speak, please use the push-to-talk microphone, button on the microphone in front of you. Before we begin the formal agenda, I will ask the Chief Executive to provide details of the evacuation procedure for those present.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, everyone. There's no fire drill scheduled in the building this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, then please make your way out of the building, down the main staircase, out of the main doors of the Town Hall, and congregate at the entrance to Caldecott Park. An officer of the Council will give instructions on when it's safe to return to the building.
Due to the lengthy agenda and the number of motions and possible amendments, I propose suspension of 13.6G and H of Part 3 of the Council Standing Orders. This will result in no second vote being taken if an amended motion is carried. The amended carried motion will take the place of the substantive motion with no further vote being taken. Who will second the motion?
I will, Madam Mayor.
Apologies for absence. Are there any apologies, Executive Director?
Apologies, Madam Mayor. Just going back to the item in which the suspension of the moving of the Council Standing Orders, if we can move to a vote on that particular motion to move the suspension of the Standing Orders.
Certainly. Could we vote on that, please? Those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Back to apologies for absence. Are there any apologies, Executive Director?
Madam Mayor, I have apologies from Councillors Douglas, Ellis and Lowe.
Item 2, to approve the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 28th of September 2022. I move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Council held on the 28th of September 2022 be approved and adopted. Who will second the motion?
I will, Madam Mayor.
Those in favour, please show. Those against, please show. The motion is carried. Declarations of interest. Can I remind members that when they declare interests, they must also declare the general nature of that interest? Are there any declarations under non-pecuniary interests as defined by the Councillors' Code of Conduct for Councillors? Pecuniary interests. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two. There's one on agenda item 7A. As a result of me being a trustee of Rugby Bareboats Trust. And the other one is in part 2 of the agenda. Item number 1B. As I'm a member of Rugby Sport for Disabled Association.
Sorry, I missed that last bit, Councillor. Can you say that again, please? The last part? You're a member of which organisation?
Sorry, Rugby Sport for the Disabled.
Thank you. Any pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors? And lastly, notice under Section 106 Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax. Right, moving on to the Mayor's announcements. It was with sadness that the Council learned of the passing of Richard Dobbs, an employee of the Council, on the 7th of November. Richard was a valued member of the Work Services team for over 23 years. Our thoughts are with his family and colleagues at this difficult time. I would ask everyone to stand now and join me in a moment's silence in memory of Richard. Thank you, councillors. Please be seated. The council recently received a trophy in recognition of the part the borough has played in bringing the Queen's Baton Relay to the community as part of the Commonwealth Games this year. The trophy will be displayed in the Mayor's Parlour and reflects the council's commitment as part of our corporate strategy to the importance of leisure and well-being to our residents and bringing communities together. Members have been informed that the council took the winning trophy at this year's West Midlands Tri-Sector Challenge, as well as winning the Leadership Award. The team was also nominated in all awards categories at the event. Teams of 6 from the organisations across Herefordshire, Shropshire, Staffordshire, Warwickshire, Worcestershire and the West Midlands went head-to-head in the all-day management challenge at Birmingham's Conference Aston. Faced with the scenario of having to deliver quality public services whilst managing limited resources, all the teams had to identify priorities, deal with politically sensitive issues, and maintain a customer-focused approach using skills such as political awareness, partnership working, problem-solving, and effective communication. This council's team, comprising of Sarah Chapman, Caroline Barnes, Henry Biddington, Sally Garden, Emma Tomlinson, and Claire Walczek, entered the challenge bearing the added pressure of the council being the reigning champions, but ensured that the council returned the trophy back to Rugby. I'd like to congratulate all those officers on their achievement, and those here today, may we just give them a round of applause. And please take our congratulations back to your colleagues who aren't here this evening. On to 5, questions pursuant to Standing Order 10. Are there any questions, Chief Executive?
Madam Mayor, there are 15 questions this evening, and the questions and responses have been circulated to all members prior to the meeting and have been published on the Council's website. Question A is from Councillor Srivastava and is to the Leader of the Council and is in relation to Ukrainian arrivals in the borough.
May I just say that if anyone has any supplementary questions after their questions, please direct these to Derek Poole via email, as we won't be taking questions on those tonight.
Question B is from Councillor Mrs Brown to Councillor Ms Robbins and is in regard to voter ID. Question C is from Councillor Ellis to the Leader of the Council and Councillor Poole and is in relation to microplastics. Question D is from Councillor Slinger to Councillor Lowe and is regarding the letter received by the Leader of the Council by the Chief Executive Officer of Warwickshire Wildlife Trust. Question E is from Councillor Slinger to Councillor Lowe and is in regards to the integrated care system between Coventry and Warwickshire and mental health. Question F is from Councillor Ms Livesey to Councillor Eccleston and is in regards to West Midlands Ambulance Trust. Question G is from Councillor Ms Livesey to the Leader of the Council regarding warm banks. Question H is from Councillor Harrington to the Leader of the Council regarding the living wage. Question I is from Councillor Ms Livesey to the Leader of the Council and is in regards to the use of data and data analysis. Question J is from Councillor Sanderson to Councillor Lowe and is with regards to points previously raised at Scrutiny Committee regarding decarbonisation of the Council's housing stock. Question K is from Councillor Sanderson to the Leader of the Council regarding energy prices and interventions to reduce the use of fossil fuels. Question L is from Councillor Edwards to Councillor Mrs Crane and is in regards to the private rented sector charter. Question M is from Councillor Roodhouse to Councillor Miss Lawrence and is in regards to void properties and the performance. Question N is from Councillor Sanderson to Councillor Picker and is in regards to transport infrastructure in the town centre. And finally, question O is from Councillor Miss Livesey to Councillor Mrs Crane and is with regards to the provision of IT support for the digitally excluded. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, may I interrupt and say to those councillors who've asked questions, please, I will answer those questions. If you've got supplementaries, please write to me and you will get an answer.
Thank you, Councillor Poole. Item 6A, to receive the reports of Cabinet and committees. There are no reports to consider from the last Cabinet meeting and other committees. Item 7, to receive the reports of officers. And during this, I have been asked a request by Councillor Howard Roberts to stay seated, and I grant you that permission, Howard. So the next item is to receive the report of the Chief Officer for Growth and Investment set out at item 7A of the agenda. The report concerns the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. Councillor Picker, will you move the report?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move the report.
Who will second the motion?
Madam Mayor, I'll second the motion.
May I call on speakers?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and it gives me great pleasure to move this report this evening. But firstly, I just want to thank our officers for the work they've done in preparing the report and the submission to the government for the UK Shared Prosperity Funding. The report covers the first year of what we hope will be 3 years of funding that we can use to enhance the town centre and the prosperity and regeneration of the wider borough. It's important that although we are awaiting confirmation from the government of the UK Shared Prosperity Funding being delivered, we do move ahead with this report this evening as there are a number of issues and spends in it that we will need to do anyway. Probably first and most significantly, the festive lights that have already gone up in the town centre and that I know are being enjoyed by residents and hopefully councillors as well at the moment. It's primarily in this spending capital funding for projects to last throughout the lifetime of the spending. But one of the key issues that I do want to touch on is for the 2023 bicentenary of the game of rugby football. That's a great opportunity for us to put our town and our borough again on the map. And I think it is very, very important that we do grasp that opportunity to its fullest and work with local businesses and other partners in the area to make that as successful as possible. One of the other things that we are seeking to spend money on is footfall counters within the town centre. This will help us measure the use of the town centre in specific areas and help inform the emerging town centre strategy, which will be coming forward very shortly. And I know one of the issues that's been raised a lot by council and that I think we will hear a bit more of later is the cost of living. One of the items in the report is to procure white goods appliances for some of our tenants. I think we all know from our own experiences that one of the easiest ways to save money is to purchase more modern, more energy efficient appliances. So we're going to bring some of those forward to some of our most vulnerable residents. That'll help not only reduce their energy bills, but also to keep the consumption of overall energy as low as we can reasonably do. So for all those very excellent reasons, I hope you will join me in supporting the report. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. May I call on any speakers? Councillor Moran.
Thank you, Councillor Picker. The intention, the idea to invest the capital now and not lose it is clearly not lost on us. I think the concern on this side of the chamber is a lack of time and opportunity to really consider what's being put forward. Having taken part with yourself in the Town Centre Working Group, I'm not aware of any of these items specifically identified to be invested in. So in all of the issues raised in town centre discussions, digital signage, I'm not aware was one of them. Clearly, the bicentenary of the game is of critical importance to the town. What's that? Just over 10% being spent on public realm improvements around the statue. Could more be done? I don't know. I guess the fundamental issue is a lack of consultation. I think this was an opportunity to spend money for the town, and for you to have the benefit of gaining greater insight would have been better. That's all.
Councillor Roodhouse.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report is as it's written, so I'm sort of seeking assurances from the portfolio holder tonight around a number of items that's been raised within that report. Talked about bus shelters and about the particular signage and the rest of it. And we all know, because we've seen them in different towns and cities, that bus shelters have signage. So should we be combining the two? I don't know, because the report wasn't clear on that. But I think, that may be one way of actually doing some extra bit of investment. But I certainly support, because most of the bus shelters out there are rubbish at the moment, really. They haven't been cleaned for years, and, the issues. And also, I'm not quite clear how many bus shelters Rugby Borough Council has now, and also perhaps hopefully some conversations have gone on with the County Council and the Highway Authority, who are talking about bus shelters at the same time. So, we don't want any sort of duplication going on there. That's sort of point one around that. The other particular element was around the white goods, which is great, slow cookers and the rest of it. And within the report, it talks about a bureaucracy if you had to go out further and the rest of it. I suppose better declare an interest. I'm appointed as trustee of Rugby Welfare Charities, and actually that charity does do a lot of giving out of white goods to particular housing associations as well. So I think there are mechanisms, and perhaps I could ask the portfolio holder to look at those mechanisms that may be around there, because there is a system which that charity uses where it comes in and it actually has to be supported. And I've seen them from Rugby Borough Council tenant support officers and other particular housing advice officers from other organisations who are actually coming forward, and it is for fridge freezers or cookers or particular items. I do know from speaking to other local authorities, they think the slow cooker route is actually the best way of actually getting quite a lot of equipment out to particular elements of it. So it's those two particular points, I think, which I can sort of try and sheet your assurance as the portfolio holder that we could actually look at. Because one of the things, as the Deputy Chief Executive will be aware, some years ago we spoke about big belly bins, and it could be that perhaps there are even bigger and shinier, newer big belly bins about that could be invested into the town centre, releasing those to be utilised elsewhere, which actually makes an investor save, because as we know, we send out teams to empty bins in the far reaches of this borough, and actually those machines will sit there, and when they're full, they'll actually signal the work service unit to go out and empty them. So perhaps there's a trick actually that we could have used to actually do a bit of an investor save there.
Councillor O'Rourke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, there's obviously a lot of good stuff in there, but I suppose just really picking up on, I think really what Councillor Roodhouse is saying and what Councillor Moran have already said. We all got quite involved and excited in terms of the listening exercise that took place, and you know, everybody gave of their views and their time, which was good. And I just think we did miss a bit of an opportunity here in terms of being able to have a bit of a look at this before it came to full council. But I have already made that point to the chief officer and to the leader of the council as well. I just think, you know, we've listened to Councillor Roodhouse talking about all the things he'd like to see, and he might have liked to have had an opportunity to talk about that before we got here tonight. So I'm guessing that we're probably all saying the same thing. You know, we do need to be engaged a little bit more in terms of what's happening. I understand the time frame and you've got to spend it, and some really good stuff in there, but there might be things that we might have done slightly differently if we'd had that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. That being the last speaker, Councillor Picker, would you like to come in? Oh, sorry, Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just again on the white goods appliances, does that include very out-of-date, worn-out cookers in our sheltered and very sheltered housing scheme, which should have been thrown out 20 years ago?
Councillor Eccleston.
Thank you. Just a point on the digital signage. I've been involved with a number of other local authorities on that very subject over the last couple of years, and it's a great opportunity to earn this council some revenue. I actually applaud what's being done on that. It is a good revenue earner, and I know that we discussed this at a meeting a couple of days ago in a different venue, but we could actually potentially fund additional signage from the revenues that these signs earn for us. And I noticed the word tombstone in there. They're quite often called totems, actually. So, thank you.
Councillor Picker.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So I'll take these in no particular order. Just in terms of the engagement, so we did obviously the engagement exercise over the summer in terms of the town centre. Things like digital signage and the bicentenary of the Rugby World Cup were discussed at the public realm and events meeting, which I appreciate you and I were not on, Councillor Moran, but this didn't spring forth from nowhere. This was discussed by members of the council as part of that exercise, so that's where some of this has gone before. If there are sort of comments about how all of those different groups were fed back, I'm more than happy to talk to officers about that and make sure that that does all come through, though there was a report on all of this in July, I believe. On the topic of engaging with our wider partners, yes, of course, we'll be engaging with the voluntary and community sector and looking at the most efficient procurement process we can go through for these goods. So I'm happy to give you those reassurances. And as we come to what we hope will be 3 years worth of funding, I'm certainly happy to take feedback on wider engagement, but there was engagement that fed into this report earlier this year. Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Picker hasn't responded to my point about ageing cookers in sheltered housing schemes.
Sorry. And bus shelters, I do apologise. So bus shelters, yes, we're talking to Warwickshire County Council about that. I think there are a couple that we have in the town centre as well. and replacing aged goods, I will get you an answer in writing to that, Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Councillor Picker. Those in favour, please show. Those against, please show. The motion is carried. The next item is to receive the report of the Chief Executive set out at item 7B of the agenda. The report concerns the Council's property acquisition and disposal policy. Councillor Mrs Crane, will you move the report?
Madam Mayor, I so move.
Who will second the motion?
Madam Mayor, I'll second the motion.
May I call on any speakers? Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Going through the report, I saw about empty homes, and the only reason that came out to me, I went to an LJ course, and we talked about it. It didn't mention how many we got, what impact it will have to residents. I've seen one on Murray Road. It's caused problems with wall being pushed over, overgrowing plants, rats, things like that. Very, very bad for the neighbours, but we just don't know who owns them. So from my personal experience there, why don't we know how many empty homes we've got? What action are we going to do this? And this will help with some of our housing stock. But that was part of the actual report. I thought actually we need a bit more information in.
Any other speakers? Councillor Moran.
Thank you. I guess starting off, the intention here is incredibly important and very, very noble, clearly. I'm sure everyone who read the note has picked up the 547 households as a minimum that are homeless in the borough, and that's a statistic to weigh heavily on everyone's conscience. Clearly, after many, many years of neglect, the lack of social and affordable housing is a pressing need. But reading through this report, it's a bit like Busman's holiday. My life is spent writing investment strategies and running investment funds. The report's good, but it's lacking an initial chapter and an end chapter. So in reading it, there's no explicit direction or targets, and there's no checks and balances at the end. So what I mean by that is, at the outset, there's no statement of what available primary capital there is to put into this. And I use the word primary capital because there's reference to debt that I'll touch on in a second. So in setting out the intention, we don't know what we have to spend. But beyond that, there's no hierarchy of priorities. So if, for argument's sake, we've got £10 million to spend, there's no clear direction. If the first opportunities come across in Hill Morton, do we buy properties in Hill Morton and we forsake villages or town centres? So there's no direction. There's no specification on what lot sizes might be. So are we going after a block of properties or is it an individual property? There's reference to basically everything. It's an incredibly open-ended policy. We reference disposals, but there's no statement of what we might dispose and when and what that might realise. Because clearly if we dispose of £25 million worth of property, we've got a much bigger budget to spend going forward. But particularly absent also is there's no specification on who's doing the buying and selling. So an acquisition surveyor or managing disposals is a really specific skill set. But I think in terms of really actual specifics, so in reference to borrowing, what's the council's risk profile? So does this delegate the team to be ambitious and aggressive in its borrowing? Don't know. There's reference to what's value for money. I've never seen an investment strategy that doesn't define that. And that might be return on equity, it might be some other measure, but to have no minimum return specified, I don't know how you can go forward. There's reference to strategic value. Could we expand on that so that we can determine it better? In terms of disposals, surely as a council, we've got a Bible on the value of every property, every bit of land that we own. So doesn't every disposal have to be weighed against its current value? But also in terms of what's the time frame? What's the approach here? Are we looking to is it a fire sale? Are we looking to sell everything we've got within the first 6 months so we get the maximum capital to deploy? Or are we've got a 3 or 5 year plan here to build up the value of these assets to maximise and sell them later? In terms of selling, the issue in terms of the stream of disposals as to how does that flood the market? So if the council owns a particular street or properties in one street, what are we going to do? But I guess ultimately, the key point I want to kind of end on is just in terms of transparency, because there should be a really open register of what we're selling